Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best gear, gadget and star power for all 58 brawlers within the game right now. So just a quick rule of thumb before we go into the video then. So of course, on the really grassy maps, you want to be definitely going to speed gear, and then depending on what brawler you play, like for example like a Pam or a Lola, you'll be using a vision gear just because of how the attack mechanics work. But if you're not using a vision gear, of course use a damage or something else. And then on non-grassy maps, you want to be using anything but speed and vision basically. So yeah, before we jump into it, make sure you're using a credit code, that'd be greatly appreciated. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so as always with these type of lists, we're going to be starting off with start brawlers and working our way up to chromatics. So Shelly is going to be the first one. The clay pigeons and shell shock combination is still the best one pretty much everywhere. And then because Shelly's only really good on the grassy maps to counter the tanks, you're going to be using speed and damage every single time. Okay, so next up we have Nita. So for Nita, the best combination by far is going to be the fox for gadget, and then the bear with me star power. I'm going to use hyper bear on heist as always, and then also use the speed and damage gear because she really lacks on that damage. So of course any additional damage is really going to help her. So next up we have Colt then. So the best gadget for Colt is definitely going to be the silver bullet, and then magnum special just for that increased range is really going to help him in his gunfights. And then the majority of the time you're going to be playing Colt on a non-grassy map, plus you're trying to break open the map as much as possible, so you'll be using the damage and its shield gear combination. Okay, so next up we have Ball. So the stomper gadget is going to be the best one for him. It's going to allow him just to get a kill on sight onto pretty much any single brawler, and then tough guy is going to allow him to stay alive for much longer. Then the best gear is going to be the health and damage gear. Health allowing you of course to heal up really quickly, and that's definitely essential for the playstyle of Ball. Okay, so next up we have Jessie. So the spark plug gadget and the energized star power is definitely going to be the best combination you can ever get with Jessie. And then the most value I get most of the time is damage and health. So health, I just feel like it really helps with Jessie. It allows her to heal up quickly, so then you can of course get more pieces of ammo on her turret. It makes for such a good combination. Okay, so next up we have Brock. So the rocket fuel gadget is going to be the better gadget in every single scenario basically, unless you're facing off against a bunch of aggro brawlers. And then more rockets for me is going to be the favorable star power. I think in knockout you might get more value out of the fourth rocket because of course you're respawning a lot every single round, so you're going to gain that extra piece of ammo, and maybe heist as well. But more rockets going to get a lot of value, especially if you clip onto a brawler pretty quickly with that super. And then damage and shield are going to be the better gears. Okay, so next up we have Dyna. So satchel charge is going to be the better gadget by far, and demolition of course is going to really help you, especially against those squishy brawlers. You can one shot them with your super, and then literally every single time the damage and the shield gear is going to be the better combination. Okay, so next up we have Boven. So the super totem and the snare a bear combination is going to be my more favorable one, but you can get some value out of a tripwire gadget, especially if you want to surprise the enemy in game modes like gem grab for example. You can get some clutch plays, and then the speed and damage gear is going to be pretty deadly with bow, but you can also go vision if you're on a really grassy map. So next up is Tick. So the best combination by far is going to be the well-oiled star power, and the last hurrah gadget is always going to be the better choice for Tick. And then when it comes to gears, my personal preference has to be the shield gear and the health gear. It just makes for such good synergy, especially if you can heal up really fast combined with the well-oiled star power, getting you to as much HP as possible with the shield gear. It just makes for Tick to just apply a lot more pressure. So next up we have 8-bits. So the plugged in star power and the extra credits gadget is going to be my favorite combination, but you can also get some value, especially in gem grab out of cheat cartridge, because a lot of times you want survivability there. But I am having a lot of value out of extra credits, especially in game modes like heist. And then the good thing about 8-bit is that you can literally get value out of every single gear, probably except for the shield gear with 8-bit. Literally all of them are really strong, but my personal preference has to be damage and health. So next up we have M. So this is a really simple one. You can't go wrong whatsoever with this build. So you have the friend zoner gadget, you have the hype star power allowing you to catch multiple enemies within your super. You're going to be healing up a lot, and then speed and damage just makes for one of the most toxic builds within the game. Okay, so next up we have Stu then. So for Stu, the best gadget is going to be breakthrough, but if you're playing on a really passive map like Dueling Beetles for example, or Backyard Bowl, then the speed zone gadget is going to be your best friend. It gives so much value to you and your teammates. And then Gas Hill star power is basically going to be the better star power every single time. You're going to get so much value out of healing consistently, the amount of supers you get. And then for me, it has to be damage and shield for the best gears, but of course if it's a really grassy map, then you're going to get a lot of value out of speed gear. Okay, so next up we have LP. Primo. So the best gadget and star power combination for me has to be Suplex. It allows you just to stun your enemies and get those extra shots in. And then El Fuego, mainly because El Primo is really bad in this meta, and the additional damage is going to allow you to finish off kills a lot easier and charge your super a lot quicker. And then damage and health has to be the better combination just because of how much HP El Primo has. Okay, so next we have Barley then. So the gadget really does depend on the matchup, but for the most part, if I'm going into ladder, I will be using this sticky syrup gadget just because there's so many aggro brawlers within this meta, especially towards the top end. And then I use medical use. I know he doesn't have the most damage without it, but just to apply a lot more pressure, I like that star power a little bit more in my personal opinion. And then damage and shield, just because he's a thrower, it allows him to build up that shield a lot easier. And then damage, of course, because he lacks in the damage. Okay, so next up we have Poco. So Poco, tuning fork and the capo is going to be the better gadget and star power combination as always. And then for gears, I think speed and damage are definitely some good ones to go with, but you can always get value out of health and shield as well. Just depends on your play style with Poco, whether you want to be aggressive or whether you want to be just standing behind your teammates all the time. So now moving on to Rosa then. So for the better gadget and star power, every single time it's going to be Grow Light and Plant Life. So I do like the Grow Light gadget a little bit more than the other one, just because since speed gears came into the game, I just feel like you don't need that slow really. Like he can just use a speed gear and close the gap between you and the opponent really quickly without the slow. So that's why I didn't really get much value out of the other one. And then obviously speed gear is going to be the best gear, and then damage is going to combine really well, especially when you have her super at that low amount of HP. Okay, so next up for Rico then. So the bouncy castle and super bouncy star power and gadget combination always going to be the better one. And then it's pretty hard for gears, because 4 gears I feel like you can always get good value out of. You've got the shield gear, which will combine really well with your bouncy castle gadget, just because you're going to be healing to full pretty quickly. So of course the shield's going to then in turn really get a lot of value. And then you've got the damage. You're going to absolutely melt with Rico with that damage gear. Speed is pretty good as well, and vision on the grassy maps is really going to help you out. Okay, so next up we have Darryl. So for Darryl, every single game mode except for heist, you want to be using the tar barrel gadget, just because it'll allow you to get kills a lot quicker. And then with star power, steel hoops is definitely going to be the best one. And for gears, the speed and the damage gear are going to be the better options. And next up we have Penny. So for gadgets, it's a really easy choice. Salty barrels definitely going to be the better one. It allows you to do at least decently well against tanks. And then we have Master Blaster. So the reason why I prefer this star power over the other one is just because Penny is still a little bit like counterable by those aggro brawlers once those gadgets are used up. So this star power allows you to get a little bit of additional damage, whilst also giving a knockback, giving you a little bit of breathing space against those tanks. And then damage and health are going to be the better gears. So next up we have one of the best brawlers in Colt. So the best builds for him then. So Flying Hook is 100% going to be the better gadget. And then star powers, it can all come down to matchups and your personal preference. My personal preference is basically all the time protected pirouette, just because you can get so much damage out of the super, and I feel like that's the main way you're going to make plays with Colt is through his super. But power throw can definitely be good if you're looking to keep your distance with him. And then for gears, it depends on the map. Of course, vision you can actually get a lot of value out of if it's a really grassy map, but for the most part I'll be using it in damage and health. Okay, so next up we have Jacky. So for gadgets, pneumatic boosters definitely going to be the better one. It allows you to close the gap between you and your opponents. Jacky has one of the worst ranges, so any additional speed is really going to help her out. And counter crush is going to be the better one, just because again Jacky's really bad, so any additional damage is really going to help her. And a lot of the times you can actually trade out a death just because of that star power. And then you have speed and damage, because again she really needs that additional damage, and any speed to help her close the opponents is going to really help. Okay, so next up we have Piper. So homemade recipe is going to be the better gadget, unless of course you're facing off against several aggro brawlers within Power League, so you want to be switching that gadget to the auto aimer gadget. And then you have snappy sniping. For me, I just feel like this is the better one overall. Like ambush, you can get some nice damage if you pair it well with the damage gear, but I just feel snappy sniping just saves you against all these aggressive brawlers, right? So you've also got the gears. I think it's a really easy choice. Damage and shield, it's going to be the better options. Okay, so next up we have Pam. So the best gadget by far is going to be Scrap Sucker. It allows you to counter those aggressive brawlers, and it really allows Pam to play super aggro. And then you have Mama Squeeze, really the better star power by far. Allows you to play your turret really aggressively and get that additional damage. And then you have the best gears then, so damage and and vision are going to be the better ones in my opinion, but you're also going to get a lot of value out of speed. So next up we have Frank, so the highest HP brawler inside of a game, and you probably know which gears to already use with him. So damage and health are going to be the better gears because you can get so much value because of the amount of HP he has. And then for gadgets, irresistible attraction, especially if you pair it with the damage gear, it can be so deadly. And then you have sponge, of course, giving him additional HP. Okay, next up we have Bibi. So for the gadget, the vitamin booster is going to be the better one for sure, giving you that additional HP whilst you're obviously taking damage, allowing you to be a lot more aggressive. And then batting stance for star power, I feel like it's really strong, especially with the speed gear. That combination allowing you to get closer to the enemies and then getting that really good knockback is the reason why Bibi is somewhat usable in this meta. Okay, so next up we have B. So for B, the better gadget by far is going to be honey molasses. Then star powers, there is a lot of choice in terms of star powers because multiple pros switch between both star powers, but for me insta is going to be a little bit better just because it allows you to keep pressure a little bit easier. And then you have a damage and speed gear for me, but you can also get some good value out of the shield gear. Okay, so next up we have Nani. So for me, the best build is always dependent on the matchup. So on bounty, for the most part, I'll be using return to sender and the autofocus build, and then for all the other modes I'll probably be using the other gadget and star power, mainly because it's pretty hard to get complete value out of your super. So just having the maneuverability with the TPs and whatever else really allows you to thrive with Nani. And then damage and shield are going to be the better gears. Okay, next up we have Edgar. So he's pretty much the worst brawler within the game right now, so it's pretty hard to really get any value out of any of his gadgets and star powers. For me, hardcore is going to be the better one just because he's just really easy to kill, right? So any additional shield is really going to help him out. And then fisticuffs combined with this, I feel like it's a little bit better. I know I said before fisticuffs were a little bit overrated, but I just feel like it's really hard to charge a super, right? So just allowing you to charge super a little bit better with fisticuffs is really going to help him out in the long run. And then damage and shield are going to be by far the best gears for Egg. Okay, so next up is Griff. So Griff only has one gadget, but for star powers, I think business resilience is by far the better star power. You might have called me crazy if I was saying this a couple of months ago, but right now every single pro player is using his star power. I don't see one pro player using the other star power. The main reason why this one is so strong is because it allows you to keep shooting whilst you're healing up every couple of seconds. You may not heal up the most, but it just allows you to keep up the pressure, which is super underrated within this meta. And then also for gears, health and damage are going to be the better ones. Okay, so next up we have Grom. So it's all dependent on the map, because on the map with a lot of grass, the watchtower is going to get so much value. You're going to get vision out of so many bushes, but for other maps that don't have a lot of grass, then of course radio check is going to be the better gadget. And then the X Factor star power, of course, going to be the better one for him. And then overall damage and shield are going to be the most value gears. So next up we have Bonnie's. So the Sugar Rush gadget is by far the better gadget, allows you to get additional DPS and also solve the problem of being super slow. And then you have Black Powder, which is going to be the better star power just because you can launch yourself a lot further, and the other star power is pretty much like the worst one within the game right now. And then best gears for sure are going to be speed and damage. Okay, so next up we have Mortis. So Mortis, it hasn't changed whatsoever. The survival shovel gadget is going to be the better one, and creepy harvest as well. And then for gears, damage and shield, so nothing changed at all within Mortis's build. Okay, so next up we have Tara. So for Tara, the best gadget near enough every single time is going to be support from beyond. And then my personal preference is healing shade, but you can also get value out of the other star power. It's all to do with personal preference. And then for gears, damage and speed are going to be the better choices, but sometimes you can opt for vision because it allows you to be extra sneaky if you know where the opponent is, and especially on maps like double swoosh. Okay, so next up we have a really broken build with Jean then. So lamp blowout is going to be the better gadget, allows you just to get an extra bit of time if you're knocking back the opponent. And then of course you have magic puffs, one of the best star powers within the game. And then speed and vision is such a deadly combination. You guys should already be aware that vision gear Jean is completely broke. Next up it is Max. So Max's best gadget by far is going to be phase shifter, and then we have run and gun, the best star power as well, allows you to get a lot more DPS. And then for gears, damage is going to be definitely the gear you want to be opting for, then it's up to you. I feel like health is a little bit better because it allows you to be a lot more aggressive with Max, but you can still get some value out of a speed gear as well. So next up we have Mr.p then. So Mr.p, I feel like it's really easy with this build because service bell and revolving door are going to be the better gadget and star power. And then for gears, another easy choice, damage and shield. It's going to basically help you against some of the weaknesses of Mr.p. So next up we have Sprout. So the best build for me has to be transplant. and overgrowth. It allows you to be incredibly toxic from a distance, and the walls are really going to help you with Sprout the most. But if you're on bounty, then the other star power and gadget going to be a little bit better because you want more survivability in a mode like bounty. But then the best gears for me, of course, super grassy map, you want to be using speed, but for the most part I use damage and health. So next up we have Byron. So I believe the build for Byron hasn't changed much because booster shots and melees are going to be the better star power and gadget choice. You can still get value out of the other options, but for me this is going to basically make you foolproof of every single scenario. And then you have a damage and shield, just because Byron is super squishy, but also he's had several nerfs with his damage department, so it's going to allow him to heal and also deal more damage to the opponents. Okay, so next up we have Squeak. So the residue gadget, one of the best gadgets within the game, so you have to use it every single time with Squeak. And then the super sticky star power enables you just to get even more slows, making Squeak super toxic. And then speed and damage are going to be the better gears. Okay, so next up we have Spike. So the life plant gadget is still going to be the better alternative for Spike. And then curveball, of course, one of the most cheesy star powers within the game right now. You've got to use curveball basically every single time. And then damage and vision is going to be the better build for him. So next up we have Crow. So a super easy build for him. Everyone should be able to say what his best build is. So the best one is got to be slowing toxin and extra toxic. Every single pro player uses that build and it just doesn't change. And then for the other options, speed is so incredibly broken with Crow. He's already super fast, but giving him that extra speed boost just makes him even harder to hit. And then of course damage is going to make up for the lack of damage he can sometimes do. Okay, so next up it is Leon. So Leon's best gadget, of course, going to be Lollipop Drop and Invisi Heal as well. And then when it comes down to gears, speed and damage, you're going to get a lot of value out of this combination. Okay, so next up we have Sandy. Then so Sandy, the best gadget and star power should never change. We have a Sweet Dreams gadget and the Rude Sand star power. Nothing's going to change about that build. And then for the best gears, we have speed and damage for the most part. But if you're really strong Sandy and if you want to get a lot of value out of your super, then Vision Gear can definitely help you out, and just overall with Sandy's playstyle. Okay, next up we have Amber. So the best gadget and star power by far is going to be the Fire Starters gadget and Wild Flames. This combination is 100% the best one. And then when it comes down to gears, another easy choice when it comes to Amber. Speed and damage are going to be really valuable to her. Okay, and lastly for all the legendaries, then we have Meg. So it should be a pretty easy choice when it comes down to gadgets and star powers. So the better gadget by far is going to be Jolting Volts, allowing you to heal, of course, whilst you're going down slowly in HP is super valuable. And then Force Field, of course, for like 30 seconds to get additional shield. Why wouldn't you want to use that star power? And then damage and shield, the ability to get double the value in the normal form and in your mech form is seriously insane. Okay, so now moving on to the chromatic brawlers, starting off with Gale. So the Twister gadget is going to be by far the better option. It allows you to completely hard counter tanks, especially when you combine it with a blustery blow star power, constantly knocking back their enemies. They can't do anything against you if they're any type of tank. And then speed and damage are going to be the better gears. Next up we have Surge. So the best gadget in the game is in Surge's kit and is called Power Shield. So Power Shield is incredibly broken, especially in 1v1 scenarios. Recently in the challenges, this gadget alone literally carried me so hard. The ability to tank a shot and then get 3 pieces of ammo is so crazily OP. And then his Serve Ice Cold gadget, of course, going to be the better star power. And then for me, you can get value out of multiple gears with Surge, whether that be with the shield gear, the speed, or the damage gear. Okay, so next up we have one of the best builds in Brawl Stars right now, and it is with Colette. So Colette's gadget called Gotcha is incredibly broken. The ability to deal damage whilst also stealing the opponent's health even more is just really crazy. And then we have the Mass Attack star power, which is always the better star power. For me, it's a lot better than Push It. Main reason being is because a lot of times good Colettes can just easily position themselves so the super will just return really quickly, so you don't really need that additional pushback. And then for me, the best gears have to be health and damage. Okay, next up we have Lou. Then so for Lou, the best gadget has to be Cyrus Syrup. The ability just to throw your super and gadget basically to half freeze them is really OP. It allows you to cycle supers really well. And then super cool, the ability to freeze them even more often is just really good with Lou. Of course, that's his best ability, right? And then for gears, then we have health and damage. Okay, so next up we have Ruffs. Then so Ruffs, always I would use the sandbags until the recent nerf to it. I would only really use sandbags against brawlers like Jean or maybe against single shot brawlers. Other than that, I use air support basically every single time. It's actually pretty good just for pressure early on. Although it may not hit the opponent, at least it gets you good lane pressure and ultimate control. And then you have the air superiority star power, which is always the better star power, being able to break open the map. Of course, it's going to allow your teammates to dominate even more. And then speed and damage are going to be the better gears, but you can also get some good value out of the shield gear. Okay, next up we have Belle. So Belle, the best gadgets all rely on the game mode in my opinion. Nest egg is pretty good on most game modes, but when it comes down to bounty and knockout, when it's more kill orientated, I prefer reverse polarity just because it allows you to get an initial pressure, and especially a lot of times people won't actually expect you to run that gadget, so you can get some really cool shots with it as long as you've practiced it pretty well. And then you have positive feedback, by far the better star power. And then for me, speed and shield are the best gears. Okay, so next up we have Buzz then. So Buzz only has one gadget, and then star powers. I think Ice Shops is a better star power just because it's pretty hard to cycle your super with Buzz, so any additional range to that super charging is really going to help him out. And then for me, damage and shield are going to be the better gears. The reason why I use shield is because a lot of time you're not actually going to be in action with Buzz. You're going to be standing around walls trying to charge your super, and then once you super in, a lot of times you can get melted with Buzz, so the additional shield is going to really help you out. Next up we have Ash. So the best gadget by far is going to be Chill Pill, and then for star powers it can come down to personal preference. Both of them are pretty good, but for me First Bash is a little bit better just because it allows you to cycle your rage a lot better, and of course that's the best thing about Ash, right? And then for gears, there's 3 gears in particular that are so crazy strong on Ash, and it again all comes down to personal preference. For me, speed and health are going to be a little bit better, but I know a lot of people that use damage as well. Okay, next up we have Lola then. So the best gadget and star power is pretty easy. Freeze frame, by far the better gadget, and then improvise as well, by far the better star power. And then for gears then, so damage is going to be by far the best gear for her. The amount of damage that you can actually get when you combine multiple things with Lola is pretty insane. And then for the other gear then, it's always down to speed or vision. Okay, next up we have Fang. So the best gadget by far is going to be roundhouse kick, the ability just to stun an opponent and get like an additional shot off pretty quickly, just basically makes Fang a lot better. And then we have Divine Souls, which the other star power is just really underwhelming, so this one you're going to basically get a lot more value. And then for the best gears, so damage is going to really help out Fang because recently he's got a lot of nerfs to his damage, so any additional damage really going to help him out. And shield, just like Buzz, I feel like the playstyle is quite similar. A lot of times it's just going to chip away, and then the ability just to super in and bounce off a lot of people. Of course you're going to take a lot of damage when you first do that, so the shield gear is really going to help you out there. Okay, so next up we have Eve then. So for best gadget, it's gotta go. The other gadget is really underwhelming. This one allows you to escape certain situations. And then Unnatural Order is by far the better star power, allowing you just to hit shots a lot more frequently. Right now Eve isn't the best in the meta because her shots are super easy to dodge, so that star power helps you a little bit in that department. And then damage and speed are going to be the best gears. Okay, so next up we have Janet. So the best gadget by far is going to be Drop the Base. It's so strong on the bushy maps, and just overall on any map with a lot of walls, this gadget is going to provide so much pressure. And then we have Vocal Warm-Up, literally the star power that Janet literally relies on to be somewhat meta. And then for the best gears, speed and damage are really going to help you out. Okay, and lastly we have the best build for Otis. So for Otis, I think Fat Spatter is actually just better than the other gadget, just because the other gadget, I feel like you're not actually just going to throw your super just on the floor plainly, right? You want to save your super for really close scenarios, hence why I don't really get too much value out of that gadget, but both of them are really underwhelming for me, so you could probably use either of them. And then for star powers, clearly Ink Refills is by far the better star power. And then for gears, then it's pretty interesting. So I think damage, he really needs the additional damage, but vision on a grassy map, just because of how his shots obviously shot out, the vision gear is really underrated and really helps him out. Alright guys, it's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. So another really long video, so I really appreciate you guys' support on this one. But as I said in the intro, a lot of these can come down to personal preference. There's multiple good gears on a lot of these brawlers, and it can all come down to whether you're against like a Leon, for example, and you might have to switch to the vision gear if you want to really push your map, speed, vision gear as well, and non-grassy maps, of course, you want to go for like damage and shield for the most part. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.